Pedro Guerra-Zúñiga has a fighting spirit, a spirit that especially likes to laugh. Growing up, Pedro expected to get cancer, at some point, but probably in his 60s. Fate has a funny disposition, I guess if you could call it that, so when he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, Pedro decided to respond on his terms, with humor and a goal of making Team Canada. After all, you never know what can happen. In this episode, we chat about how showing up can be the most powerful thing you do, the impact of philosophy on his recovery, why he likes dry tooling so much, beyond just being tendon-friendly, and training as a larger athlete, among other topics. Before we get to the interview, I want to thank our new members, Victor, Matt, Will, Maton, Susan, Val, Brody, Thomas, Kate, on team, Luke, John, Aaron, with one A, I said it funny, sorry, Aaron, and Sofyan. Thank you all for supporting the podcast and the online magazine. Also, you can still enter for a chance to win a set of Black Diamond Hydras. Head to our Instagram page at ice_beta and look for the photo of the Hydra to find the giveaway details. A big thanks to Roger Strong, our guest last week, for setting this up for us. We'll get to the chat with Pedro shortly, right after a quick message from our sponsors. Gloves are essential for winter climbing, and with Anew, you're in good hands. As a boutique climbing brand, they only care about making the best ice climbing and dry tooling gloves around. There are no shareholders to report to. They earn their keep with an uncompromising pursuit of durable, dexterous, and waterproof. That's because it's part of the heart and soul of the company. It starts with decades of establishing first ascents on ice and mixed lines, combines generational glove-making know-how, and is topped off by a belief in sustainability. The result is ultimate care for the craft of climbing and design. To learn more, check out their gloves and story at anew.com. That is ANIIU.com.
We get it. For us, ice season never really ends. It just kind of blends between rock, plastic, and plywood until waterfalls freeze again. No matter how you climb in the off-season, Furnace Industries keeps you going till your next bout of screaming barfies. With their gym-safe dry ice evolutions, you can keep up your fitness indoors. And if you're looking to challenge yourself on your home wall, they have the largest variety of dry tooling holds in America. Check out their full lineup of ice and dry tooling gear at furnace-industries.com. Because for us, it's always ice season.
Well, thank you very much, Pedro, for joining today.
You're welcome.
I'm here. It's 4 p.m. my time, and I'm here with my fourth cup of coffee today because it's Sunday afternoon. But what do you have? What do you have there?
I have coffee and chocolate milk. It's my way to go. I'm addicted to chocolate milk, so I always tell that there's just one way to get into my heart through my stomach, and it's with chocolate and milk. So my wife always has chocolate milk at home all the time.
Yeah, and he's not kidding because it's a larger than normal mug that you've got.
Well, I'm a big boy,
which we will talk about later as far as training is concerned. So I came across you over the winter because I was looking at Team Canada and who was competing in Edmonton, and you were one of the competitors. I believe that was your first World Cup, and I was curious what that experience was like for you.
That's correct. That was my first World Cup, not my first competition. I have competed before in Canmore Ice Festival in 2007. That was when I moved to Calgary, and in Festiglass the year before. And it was quite amazing. I had 3 goals for the competition. First goal is not to end up dead last, which I achieved. Second goal, to have fun, which I did. I had a lot of fun. And my third goal was to learn, which unfortunately I learned as I was falling. Just technique that it's so different when you're switching from dry tooling rock to kicking on plywood. There are several things that don't make sense until you experience them, like kicking and the length of your front point. But yeah, I learned the hard way, and I'm planning to keep competing next season. And the people are amazing, like competitors from all over the planet or the world. They are very open, they're very friendly, welcoming. everybody's friends. When I went to Festiglas to compete and I came back, I was telling my wife that the competition scene is more like a summer camp. You go and you get so excited to see
Winter
the
camp.
people. Yeah, kind of. And then you're like, oh, let's write each other. Let's exchange information. We'll see each other next year. Blah blah blah.
We're gonna be best friends
Yeah,
forever.
best friends forever. Yeah, oh, yeah, I love you. Blah blah blah. Don't forget to write. And as an example, one person, Moshen, who was first place last season, the previous season, not this last one, on speed. I met him at Festiglas, and we were just chatting and all that. And my wife and I were walking Edmonton, and I saw him, and it's just instinctively he came, gave me a hug, and I told my wife, "See, this is what I was telling you." And of course, there's amazing couple like Marianne and Dennis. They're amazing people. They stayed with us one day when they were traveling here in the Rockies. Awesome people. And it's funny, one of the best advices I got during the competition was from Sam Serra from the US team. I was talking
Super
with
nice
him.
guy.
Yeah, amazing guy. I'm like, which tip do you give me, or any pointers? Yeah, don't fall. Like, I can do that. That was for speed. And he's like, just don't fall. I'm like, okay, I can do that.
Or stab your leg. I feel like that's number 2.
So I climbed super slow because I didn't feel comfortable. The ice was on the speed wall was very thin. It was breaking on us heavy climbers. So I just take it slow, and that's why I didn't end up on that last. So it was quite interesting.
I like that. That'll come up later as well. I guess, how much training time did you have on plywood before the competition? Because that is a sharp contrast to rock.
I will say close to none.
Oh, wow.
I don't remember if it was on 2 weekends before, if I'm not mistaken. I went with another member of the team, Sarah Lily, because Rebecca Lewis, that used to be part of the team, she was giving a clinic. So I went there and I started kicking plywood and just trying to get into kicking instead of just placing your front point. It's so different because, yes, you have open feet, but that doesn't mean you can put that same pressure on the hold as you do on rock, or you have the already carved or worn out footholds. And there's a lot of tension on competitive ice. So your body's in constant tension that you don't do that much on dry tooling on rock, because you can kind of find a place to rest or step here or step there.
Man, you were like learning to comp ice climb on the fly, and all the like body positioning and kicking strength required as you were going. That's wild.
That's why, when I mentioned that I learned the hard way, I was doing my second route on the qualifiers, and as soon as I moved, I knew what was my mistake, and because my front points were not long enough, I was popping them out with my shoe toe box, and as soon as I did that, I'm like, I know what the problem is, and I was falling. And then I had a talk with Rebecca Lewis that she told me that, and then with Spanish coach Israel Blanco, same, we were talking because they were excited that there was somebody in Canada that spoke Spanish, so I was speaking with them, and so he's like, this is blah blah blah, like, yeah, you should have told me before the competition.
Oh man. So obviously, knowing what you know now, are you planning to do more time on like a competition styled walls before this next year?
Yeah, but I have a challenge. I could have the space, but I don't have the will or the money to build a ice climbing cave at home.
Yeah.
So that means I need to destroy one room, which it's kind of hard. I did like a little setup for my backyard where I can kick on plywood, and I've been working on that. But it's also what I've been working on. I design gym peaks. I just have my beta or prototype. I've been thinking of building more. It's a steel pick that can be exchanged on your ice axes or your ice tools that is gym friendly. Not like the ones from furnace industry that are epoxy.
Not the escape picks.
No, I have those ones, but these ones are more, they can withstand Stein pulls, even though you can rip the hold. I try not to, but what I do is I kick the gym plywood, the regular rock gym plywood, with boots. I climb with alpine boots all the time to mimic my competition boots. So when I go, I kick to get that muscle memory of kicking all the time when I go up.
So you have let's start with the pick. You have a steel pick, but I think there's like a covering or something on it, right?
No, I welded a base. So it's an inverted T-shape pick. But I put shoe rubber at the bottom so they don't damage the hole. Imagine a ice pick and you grind all the bottom teeth and you put a 1 centimeter plate below it or weld it.
Is it like circular?
No, it's just a T shape, like inverted T shape.
And you put some like rubber in it, so it's mostly. Yeah. I'm surprised the gyms allow that.
I've been working with my local gym for a long time. When furnace industry came up with the dry ice, with the loop ones, I had to come up with a program or requirements and how it was safe to use it and all that stuff. In the gyms here, the Calgary climbing centers, they allow you the rubber loop and the full tool that it's wood with rubber, but you need to have a lanyard all the time. So you cannot lead as well because you cannot drop them. So there are many things, and I've been working with the gym upper management to say it is safe.
How well do the picks hold on tools?
Let's go back to my physical situation. I'm heavy. So with the dry ice, they're the width kind of the first generation Nomics.
Yeah.
So by hanging on them, I was hurting my pinky fingers a lot. So I was developing calluses like inside the cartilage and all that stuff. So that's why I climb with the extremes, because the pommel is the widest of all the tools. And it has nothing to do with my grip strength. It's just hanging on the tool. That's what hurts. So that's why I went to the changing the pick training system. So the ones I designed, I've been experimenting with different rubbers. And because of the area of the rubber, they were kind of fastish, but I use them pretty much daily. So
yeah. But I imagine if it's a smaller surface area, you're getting more specific pressure that probably keeps you engaged more.
Yeah, because with the escape peaks, I couldn't grab crimps or place on crimps. And with the ones I have, I can put on crimps.
Because you can kind of get it in the positive part.
Yeah.
Nice. Do you have like a metallurgy background, or are you working with like Howie tool or something? Or?
No, I contact Howie, but he hasn't replied to me. Even though there were Howie picks, it's because I work in construction. I know people on different trades. So turns out that one of our suppliers is a welding manufacturer, and I contact them and, hey, I have this idea. But yeah, they cost me a lot, like $200, $300 the pair. So no cheap.
Yeah, that's not cheap. but like it's cheaper than Kukunogi titanium.
Yeah, tell me about that. I have broken those picks several times. Yeah. I was doing M10 or something, only Stein pulls. And I broke the Kukunogi pick, and I even contact Kukunogi and Stas Beskin. Even Stas is like, how do you break those? Like, I don't know, have you seen my size? And when I met him at Festiglass not this past one, the previous one, he's like, oh, now I get why you break them. It's like, you're big. He's like, yes, I know.
Interesting. I guess I don't know the tolerances for the pick ratings, but I would assume that there would be accounting for a weight range well within normal. I guess I'm wondering where like that comes in, because you're not the first person I've heard to break these picks. Well, not Kukunogi specifically, but break picks.
I have also broken Howie picks and Cassin picks or camp picks, especially on Stein pulls. When I do a Stein, I try to go kind of dyno from the Stein. So I go down and I pull hard to go up. So that it's a lot of torque on the end of the pick. So if the pick it's not fully clear, it's too much pressure on the tip of the pick. It's something that I have dealt with on my drytooling life. So I know, as an example, even I contacted, I don't know if it was Nick Hernandez from Furnace or
Ben,
yeah, because I was breaking the loops on the dry ice. And they're like, oh, what are you doing? Well, I'm doing figure fours and I'm dynoing. It's like, you're not supposed to dyno with them. Like, I need to train. Like,
yeah.
So I was pretty much, and they're rated to 400 pounds. Like, well, I weighed around 200 and just dynoing or having a dynamic move. I was breaking the loops all the time. I feel fat, but I know that it is just because of my size.
I saw that recent photo of you on Instagram with a shirt off, and that I wouldn't call you fat. It looked pretty lean to me.
It's like, well, if you
why are you
compare me to the other
dynoing
clevers-
anyways, though? You're like a
I love
long guy.
dynoing. I love dynoing. Like, I find it so cool. Like, and so it's like but just as a background about me, I'm an identical twin. There's somebody that looks just like me with a dad bod in Australia, my twin brother. And my mom used to say when we start climbing together, she's like, oh, I'm very happy that you guys climb together because your brother is the voice of reason and you're the adventurous one. And I used to say like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So we go to a crag and I look at a route and I tell my brother, oh, what do you think? It looks dangerous. So that means I go first, right? It's like, yep. And my mom is like, why? Like, I love dynoing. It's like just the precision. It's like, I can't put it like playing with fireworks. Kind of like just that excitement that you throw. And when you stick your dyno with the tools, it feels so good. But the first time I was able to dyno outdoors and stick to it was on Swiss cheese at the playground in Canmore, Alberta. I was desperate. I was just done. And like, okay, let's go for it. I just throw, dyno, and the pig landed on the hold. I'm just swinging, and my wife starts taking the slack. I'm like, no. I'm here. I'm finishing. And I was so happy. Like, and she's like, I wasn't sure that you were going to stick that. Neither am I. But the moment I felt the pig landing on the right hold and not coming off, I'm like, oh yeah, I can do it. And it's just that rush of adrenaline and emotions when you stick a dyno. It's like, this is possible. It's insane, but it's possible.
I can certainly understand the appeal of comp climbing then, because there seems to be quite a few dynos incorporated into routes the past few years. Did you get to do any at the World Cup?
No, I tried the routes after, 2-3 weeks after. They left the holes, the boxes and everything. So I just went, no pressure, no stress. So I went once by my own and the other one with my wife. So even my wife is like, you really enjoy doing this crazy stuff, right? I was like, yeah. Like, I don't know if you saw the big boxes in Edmonton, just hanging and swinging. Well, you had to climb the wall, the ice wall, that when you see it from below, you're like, oh, how come it's so hard for people to be there? It's like a pirate plank. Like, and especially with comp boots that you don't have the heel crampons or some others, they have the ones just with front points. Like it is scary. Even on top rope, it is scary. And then you had to jump to the box, and from the box jump to the other box, and everything is swinging as you move it. Like it seems impossible, but when you do it, you're like, this is so much fun, and you just pushing yourself to achieve new or find out what you're capable of.
You mentioned that as a heavier athlete or a bigger build athlete, that it takes a lot more strength to be able to hang on your tools. And I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit about like what your training looks like to be able to hang.
I work mostly on my endurance and awkward positions. So I do a lot of rowing, like indoor rowing, because that way I'm working my upper body and my legs at the same time, and gives me the endurance to keep pulling. It's not the same as just hanging from the tools. It allows me some kind of rest, but I have noticed an improvement on my hanging time. But also, I always said that as a, let's call it, mature big climber, I need to work 3 times as hard to get half of the results as other lighter, younger climbers. But I try to work on my endurance on the tools, either dynamic or static, doing a lot of wiper blades, so making it more dynamic in the sense of when I'm on my projects or on any roof, drytooling roof, it's not that I'm static, just hanging from the tool. I need to move my body and engage my core. So I work on that to get that endurance and be able to switch. As an example, I struggle a lot with figure fours in the sense that that constricts my chest and I have problems breathing, and therefore I get tired faster. What I do is I switch from 4 to 9, and when I'm on a figure 9, I just let drop my non-tool hand. I let it drop, so that way I open my chest. I was projecting with my wife, and I got into an iron cross, and somebody mentioned to her, like, oh, he's going to fall. And she's like, no, he's not. He's just resting because he needs to breathe. So when I'm climbing, I constrict my chest so much that I cannot breathe well.
Yeah. So the volume of your chest is so big that like when you're in that position, it's just like compressing. Damn.
I was mentioning that with John Blackwood, and he has the same thing, that it's wrong assumption that, oh, you're bigger, you're stronger, it's easier for you. No, it comes with other challenges. And it's not only that we have the reach, but we need to control our swings more than lighter people. So we have more momentum and physics and blah, blah, blah. So I focus a lot on endurance and a lot of laps on auto belay, or when I have a belayer, just go up and down, up and down. A lot of things I do is mock lead with the auto belay. So as I go, I start clipping and I down climb and I fake clip all the time. That has given me a lot of endurance and stability when I need to clip, and I see the results. When I'm projecting, that I'm on an awkward position and I need to clip, so I feel I have the technique and the strength to pull a weird move and clip, or like crossing my hand under or above my tool to clip and be able to continue. And I think cardio has been very important for me too. It will be nice to have a specific trainer that will focus on that, but also I'm not your average size body shape climber. I have the reach, but I have the weight, so I'll have to work with that and adapt my climbing to my needs instead of trying to copy others' type of climbing.
You're obviously super strong to be able to hold, iron crosses and then the weight that you're carrying as well. When you're getting pumped and you're in a rest position, how quickly can you recover?
It depends a lot on how much I have climbed until that moment. If I fall and I take like half an hour, I recover well. Also, because of cancer and chemo, it takes me longer to recover as I used to before, which is annoying, but it is what it is. So I just take my lunch. I drink my chocolate milk while others climb, or I'll belay. And that's why when somebody's projecting and I just fell off my project, I'm like, sure, I'll belay. Just go for it. No rush.
I do wonder, like, what your aerobic sessions look like, because strength is endurance, but aerobic sessions is what builds capillarization and lets you clear out and lets you recover faster on the wall. So I guess I was just wondering, like, you said that you could climb more with rowing, which is really interesting because I'm actually in like my aerobic base building phase right now, and I'm doing like just really extended long tool hangs with like feet on the ground just to like start getting back into it. Rowing makes a lot of sense to me because I'm not going to a rope climbing gym, and so I'm just going to a boulder gym, and like to do traverses for like 10, 15, 20 minutes, like it actually, there's not enough like jugs to be able to like, I can't find the right intensity to be able to do it without pumping, actually. So I was trying to figure out like other ways to get like local forearm.
The thing is, I row around 1 hour to hour and a half.
Good
So
Lord.
I'm known at the climbing gym as the
my
guy that is
God.
always on the rower, like always rowing full resistance. So that's what had helped me. But I know that I need to push myself more that way because of my weight. And after I finish that, I do all my strength routine, wiper blades.
After?
Yeah, wiper blades, figure fours, around the world, lever planks or pull-off planks. I forgot the name. The ones that you just stand up and you're holding your pull-up bar and you just bring your legs up, not on a square but a full plank.
Toes to bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then on the days I go just climbing to work on technique, I try to climb up and down all the time, do laps. That way I gain also endurance. So, and when I can, I go for trail running, mountain running. I try to stay active at all times of day. Like if I'm at work, I'm walking all the time. If I'm outdoors, I like to go to the mountain. If I can go up faster, I'll go faster, just to keep improving my cardio, because at the end it has paid to climb. And as an example, to Alcatraz, it's 1 hour and a half of strenuous hike, especially when it's hot. You need to have the cardio to just get there and then have the energy to keep
And then be able to
climbing.
perform.
Yeah.
So what does your strength training look like? I know that you're doing like figure fours with a dumbbell, which you're sort of bringing to max extension below you, and then doing a lift up. You're sort of curling your body and then lifting up above you, like a shoulder press thing.
Yeah, well, that one is because I never feel comfortable on figure fours. I try to do something that takes me out of my comfort zone. So I do that full extension. I'll pull the dumbbell up, down. I switch to the other tool, and I do the same with the other hand. If I'm getting tired there, I transition to a figure 9 to be able to open my chest and breathe. Around the world on a pull-up bar, I start with my feet at the bottom, and I go all a circle around, and all control, like extended legs, all around, come down slowly, and then back again. Then wiper blades is hanging from the tools, square with the legs, toes pointing up, and go right and left 10 times. I do some lower back stretches with a kettlebell just to keep the lower back engaged. Mostly I try to work my core because that's where I feel is my weak point, and I require more when I'm on overhangs on roofs. I try to find the specific exercise for what I'm projecting. Now that I'm projecting kabuki mono, I'm looking on full extensions with a lock off around my hip. I go to a bouldering wall and I start doing, but this is a cross, like I cross my arms on a kind of a iron cross. So if I find myself struggling on one move while I'm projecting, I try to replicate that move. I start on vertical, and then we have a session, I think it's called session wall at the gym, that you can adjust the angle. So I start a little bit overhang, and then I start increasing the overhang and work on that move over and over so I can get that muscle memory and confidence on throwing long moves, especially while leading, that you're always hesitating, like, oh, am I going to be able to clip? What if I fall? I'm going to hit this. I used to do a lot of clapping with chin-ups and clapping. So that helped me a lot to have that explosive energy and let go. When I'm dead pointing or dynoing on drytooling, it's that confidence that you need to develop as well. It's not only the strength or the physical aspect, but also the mental aspect to feel comfortable in doing that.
Do you hangboard at all?
I have one hangboard, but it's a specific drytooling hangboard. So I have a bunch of Kurokonogi holes, some epoxy holes, and Howie holes. I just put the hangboard and I do that with my tools because it's mostly what I use most of the time on the tools. So, and because of what I mentioned, my injuring my fingers with crimps, I don't want to hurt my fingers with that. And
yeah, it's not worth it.
yeah, so that's how kind of my strength training. I'm not a fan of lifting weights, especially because I see all the kids that they just arrive to the weight training area and they just start pulling and pushing. It's like, dude, you're going to hurt yourself. Like, you just arrive. Come on, warm up or stretch at least.
Understood. Did you also ride motorcycles, and what other crazy things did you do?
I used to do parkour before parkour was in something. Like my brothers and I used to climb and jump roofs, and my mom always said, like, if you don't hurt yourself, you're not happy, right? Like, it's not that makes me happy, but I do it, so I always end up bruised, bleeding, dirty. So I did bullfighting though.
You did? Wait, say that. Pardon?
I did bullfighting when I was 15.
Like, you did it for like a season, or you
just for my birthday. So like, let's go. Let's see what happens. It was eye-opening because we have an expression in Mexican Spanish. It's translating to, it's not the same thing to talk about bullfighting behind the barrier that when you are in the barrier. So everybody says, oh yeah, that looks easy. Oh, how hard is that? And I apply that to my daily life. When people say like, oh, you could do this or this, well, are you there? No. So it's just to manage your fears when you are in the presence of danger or a risk. So yeah, we all fear, we all have those feelings, but it's managing those feelings to get an advantage on that situation. Because when my grandfather used to say, like, don't let fear rule you, because that's when things get really dangerous, because you don't think you need to. I applied that when I'm climbing. Like, it's always when you're, as an example, yesterday that I was projecting, I was feeling that I'm going to fly. I cannot clip, and I wasn't able to clip one quick draw, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to fall and go for a ride. And I'm like, well, why don't I relax and try it again? And I was just hanging on the tool and trying to clip because the permadraw was in certain position that I couldn't clip it properly. So I had to reach further, and this is on a roof, reach further to clip. And when I clip it, I'm like, oh yeah, I can do this. And just manage those fears. And that includes competing. Like, it's, of course it's scary, like, oh, what I'm going to do, but it's when you accept things as they are, it's more, well, for me it has worked a lot, especially after all my chapter dealing with my health and all that.
Two questions. What's the phrase in Spanish?
No es lo mismo ver los toros desde la barrera. And it translates, it's not the same to see the bulls from behind the barrier.
And then, so you had this exposure to this idea of confronting your fear pretty early on. Why was your grandfather sharing that idea with you?
It's something that we were always taught about. He actually was a World War II hero. He was
Oh,
an American. He was a fighter pilot, and he got condecorated and blah blah blah. He was touring the U.S. after the war, giving speeches and all that stuff. And so it was always like, manage your fears. Like, you can do it. You can do it. And well, as you know, I went through cancer 2 years ago. And it's something that I used to talk with my grandmother, that she was kind of my best friends. It's, what would my grandfather say? Just go for it. Try it. You're alive. Keep trying. And that's how I been looking at my life more recently, more in a philosophical way, in the sense that we are here and we're now. So tomorrow is no guarantee. So do what you like. Don't respect yourself, respect others, respect your environment, and enjoy your life, because regardless of our beliefs, we just have right now one chance. And either you enjoy life or you don't. So, as an example, when I was going through cancer, it was emotionally draining because my wife was upset because I could not be here anymore. Let me give you a background of that. I was actually climbing a route that I put up, D8, in Grotto Canyon, Canmore, Alberta, and I took a whipper. So I was starting to have a lot of internal pain, and I thought that I hurt myself with that whipper because it was kind of in the lumbar area. So I thought it was the harness that did something. So I'm kind of neglected that for a bit, and I end up at the hospital because I couldn't stand the pain. That at the hospital I was diagnosed with cancer. It was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I was on stage 3. It was that bad that they told me, like, you're not leaving the hospital, because if you leave it, you're not coming back, period. I'm like, okay. So it was very fast and emotionally draining. And if I was managed, and I went through chemo, and of course I got COVID at the hospital, so I had something else to deal with. So I started reading a lot of philosophy, especially Stoicism and nihilism and history. Like, I always like Noah Yuval Harari, and the way he explains things. Made me realize that, well, if I wake up every day, I have another chance to try things, even if I fail the day before. So I'm alive, I'll try it again. If it doesn't happen, well, I'll try it again. And as an example, when I was going through cancer, luckily I had a long-term disability by my employer. I was able to focus that time in just recovering. So I was just plainly training. I was going to the rock gym twice a week for 8 hours. And other days I was going Mondays and Wednesday for 8 hours each day. Tuesdays and Thursdays for 4 hours just to climb, do laps. And because I didn't have anything else to do, I was taking it super easy. And every time I went through chemotherapy, it was start from zero again. Like, it destroys you. You don't have energy to do anything. But I was always like, well, I woke up, I can try it again. Even if I don't achieve what I hope to achieve, I'll go for it. And that's when I decided to get back into competition. And I went to Glass, and same thing, with my goal of not ending dead last. I did well. I had a blast. So I decided to focus more on competition.
I want to kind of go into a lot of that. If I want to unpack a bit of that. I was reading an essay you wrote for Cancer Society of Canada. You noted that you were essentially expecting a cancer diagnosis at some point, but you were a bit surprised to receive it at your age. You know, when you found out, Looking back now, like, was there any signs ahead of that? And, when you found out, like, what was your reaction?
No, well, I think I took it more maturely than everybody around me. I was like, okay, it is what it is. Because my grandfathers both died from cancer. Some other family members died from cancer or had cancer. I always thought I was kind of like in a romantic way, was the tormented soul when I was growing up. I was not as chatty as I am right now. So I always thought like, well, that's going to be my end. Tormented poet, I used to call myself. I used to write poetry back then. So it has to be suffering and all that stuff. And this is what it's going to be. I always had that at the back of my mind. So when I got diagnosed, I'm like, well, it is what it is. And even when they were trying to find out what type of cancer it was, and I told the resident specialist, like, just tell me. I don't care if it's terminal. I just want to know what it is so I can work on that. Even if it's terminal, I can start setting up my affairs and go with it. Not knowing drives me insane because I cannot decide one way or another. So well, when they came with the diagnosis that it was treatable and all that stuff, I'm like, oh, sweet. So what can I do with that? I had a conversation with my specialist and I told him like, okay, so I heard that a study that was done here in Alberta regarding exercising during chemo treatment and cancer, that is recommendable. I asked him like, okay, so do you recommend me to exercise? Like, yeah, it's good, blah, blah. Like, okay, so how much? He's like, well, I don't know. How much do you do? Well, right now I'm running 20 kilometers every other day and training for 4 hours rock climbing. And on weekends, depending, I spend 12 hours climbing, mountaineering. Like, no, not that much. Like what, 50%? 10 kilometers and 2 hours? No, less than that, like 25 to 35%. Okay, so 7 kilometers. Yeah, I can run that.
Even that seems aggressive from the doctor. Man, you must have like really pressed him.
Yeah, and it's funny because in follow-up meetings, he looks at me and like, you're still exercising, right? Like, yep. How much are you running now? And like, well, depending on the day and how I'm feeling, sometimes it's 5, 7, 10 kilometers. And he's like, you're running 10 kilometers. I'm like, yeah, well, not daily, but every other day. Like, you have cancer. You are under chemo. I know what you have. I put that on you. And you're still in better shape than me. He's like, yep. What do you want me to say? I'm hyperactive. For me, exercising became my happy place because I know what I have to do, how I need to do it. And I just focus on one thing because I suffer from ADHD. So it's easier for me to focus on one specific task, even if it's repetitive, than trying to figure out things for my future. So
yeah. Ridiculous that you could have that capacity, but you're not just an average person because I think you got into dry tooling. You were telling me that you were climbing or you were starting to get into 514, right?
Yeah, actually, that's why I got more into dry tooling. I was doing 13s. 13C was my highest back then, but because of my size and weight, I was pulling pulleys a lot. So I'm like, I really want to do 14s. I had already picked 114 that I was going to start projecting. And when I start injuring my fingers so much, I'm like, yeah, this is not worth it. And it had nothing to do with my strength or cardio or anything else. It was just my plain weight on my fingers that was snapping them because, of course, the harder it is, the smaller the hole. So I transitioned to dry tooling, where, of course, it's the same handhold all the time. And you can have a relaxed hand while you're dry tooling. And it worked perfect. So now I just train dry tooling and I casually rock climb every now and then.
Okay. The reason why I brought that up is because you have like an incredible base going into recovery. And so I guess I'm wondering because when you weren't right off the bat running 5 to 7K every other day, what was it like after the first few rounds of chemo?
Slow and hard.
Yeah.
Like I was feeling super dizzy. I couldn't stand the light. but of course I will run with shades, and it was just like a short trot or a brisk walk. And as my body started getting used to the chemo, it was easier. It was every 3 weeks. So let's say week one, I was pretty much barely doing things, even though I was training. It was kind of start from zero. And then by the end of week three, I was well, and then back to zero. So I saw that as a challenge instead of a downer. So like, okay, I know that I'm going to go through this again in 3 weeks. So I'm going to make sure that I can keep doing it. And I'm going to start again from zero, doesn't matter. And I'm going to prove myself and the system that just because you have cancer and you're going through this, it's a death sentence. So like, okay, I'll do it. And as I mentioned to you before, like I had a great support from my wife, which, well, we were not married back then. And that's another story. She was like, okay, as long as you're okay, if you feel bad, just give me a shout and I'll go rescue you wherever you are. It was mostly going to the rock gyms. And she was taking me outdoor climbing. She even went with me dry tooling, that I sent you one of those pictures. She was like, it's, well, not annoying, but she was like, it's so impressive that you're going through cancer and chemo. And when we go somewhere to climb, you're still on sighting 11s. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to say. It is what it is. But I kept training because that was the only thing that I could find a purpose within the situation I was going to. Because I rejected the idea to stay home and feel sorry for myself and like, oh, I'm suffering, I'm in pain. Even when my mom found out, she's like, oh, I want to go and take care of you. Like, no, you're not coming to take care of me. You come to visit, you're not taking care of me. Like, you are here as a guest. You don't do anything for me. I don't want you to do anything for me. And she's like, oh, you're so rude with me. Like, I don't want you to make me feel bad about what I'm going through. I want to prove myself that this is not the end of my life, that this is another opportunity to improve myself.
I do wonder about expectations and how it impacts what you think is possible, and also like how you actually choose to act, right? I mean, it's kind of like this concept of exposure. Like if you're around growing up around doctors and engineers and things like that, it's very easy for you to see yourself becoming a doctor or engineer or whatever. I wonder if you were like, did you talk to other people that had gone through cancer or were going through it? And it seemed like you were very particular about, I'm choosing my own way out of this, almost within the medical system, but then, you know, like with your mindset and what you were allowing into your sphere of, you know, this is how I'm going to approach it. It seemed like you were very particular.
Yeah, and that has to do a lot with, of course, with my family and my sibling situation, that I'm an identical twin. So all my life, even before I was born, there was always competition with my twin. And when you're a twin, which is the most annoying thing in the world, everybody compares you. Everybody asks you, like, if you have mental powers or you can telepathy, if you exchange girlfriends, and everybody thinks that your identical twin is a slave you're born with. Like, I'm going to make my twin brother to do this if I had one. Like, no, it's not that way. It's just a regular sibling or brother that looks just like you. That's it.
You didn't feel like a particular...
I know we are very close. Like, we talk daily, even though we are in different parts of the world. But it's the thing that everybody's comparing you. And everybody wants to put you in the, let's call it twin set. Like, that I start looking for my own way of doing things. Not to be what my parents wanted me to be, but what I wanted to be. Even, well, my dad is an engineer, or civil engineer. My mom is a dentist. That's why I climb with a mouth guard, because of my mom.
Okay.
So it's just being myself, just because I have somebody that looks just like me doesn't mean I am not myself. So I have to prove others, including my family, that I'm not my brother and vice versa. That's why I choose to do things my own way. It doesn't matter if everybody do it one way. I want to do it my way because that way I don't need to fulfill the box that people expect me to fulfill. I'm just kind of stubborn and like to go against the flow.
Yeah, sure. Can we talk about your brother?
Sure. He's fat and he's ugly.
Moving on.
No, it's funny. He has a dad bod because he's a dad. And I always tell him, like, you are how I would look like if I had chosen to have kids. And I am what you would have looked like if you had not had kids. So sometimes he finds it funny, sometimes he finds it sad. But of course, he loves his kids. But I always tell him, like, well, it's one or the other.
So he ended up in Australia and you ended up in Canada. Was there a particular reason why you guys wanted to move? Well, I guess move or try a different country?
Away from our families. It's
fair.
That's why we like to do things more our way. Latin American culture, they always know to do what you're doing better than you, and they have never done it. So it's quite stressful. And as I mentioned, my grandfather, a war hero, and all that stuff, everybody expects a lot from you. So on my mom's side, it's always like, oh, you need to be the best. You need to be this. You need to have awards, recognition. And like, yeah, but do it because you feel like achieving that, not because you have to fulfill the family expectations. So that's why not having expectations on others works way better for me. As an example, in the climbing scenario, I don't mind going out with people that don't climb the same grade as I do. We are going there to climb. If you want to project something and you can't be your rope gun, I'll put a top rope up and then I'll belay you. As long as you belay me on what I'm working on, I'm perfectly happy. Like, I think we put too much pressure on ourselves to fit something that we lose track of what gives us pleasure.
Yeah. Interestingly, I've heard that quite a bit from competitors, actually, where they get so driven, ultimately towards a certain idea of success. And I think the better you get at something, it tends to become more close to you. It tends to become more important and a little bit tied into your identity. And I guess you're newer to competitions. Do you have more expectations beyond not being last for this next year?
Well, of course I do, to improve my situation. And it's not that I'm new to competitions. In Mexico, I used to do horse show jumping. And we used to go to competitions all the time. And that was super stressful. We were expected, my twin brother and I, to always be first and second. And that was the expectation. When I moved here to Calgary, I started competing in the Calgary Climbing Center circuit, bouldering circuit. And it was fun, but I was pressuring myself too much that I stopped enjoying it. It was, oh, I need to do this place, or I need to do that, blah, blah, blah. I need to be the best because it's all this time I'm putting. So I stopped enjoying it. That's why I stopped competing until I went through cancer. And now I'm honest with myself. I don't have the resources. I don't have the youth to be at that level, but I'm competing under my own terms and to be the best I can be, not to be good, but the best I can perform. So not expect to be first place all the time, but to improve myself from the previous competition. That is my goal.
Yeah. So you ended up coming to Canada, and it seems like you were always intentional about defining who you were independently. But like, what was the experience like coming to a country where, I mean, you basically had free reign of who you are and not expectations?
I'm happy. As an example, right now in summer, I always say I'm melting, and everybody's like, "Oh, but you're from Mexico. You should like the heat." And like, I came here running away from that, I like the cold. I don't like beers. I don't like beaches. I don't like tequila. I don't like senoritas. They're all crazy. And I always say like, well, winter has so many advantages. Like here in the Rockies, you have no bears in winter, no mosquitoes, and no tourists. So you're just climbing by your own. So here I don't need to fit on somebody's expectations on me. And that's why myself and my brother had to leave our home country because of those expectations. It's not that we don't love our families, but we want to be happy.
Speaking of expectations, it kind of goes both ways because I feel like sometimes when you idealize a place or you're really excited by a place and maybe you haven't lived there before, you visited and you think the best of it, you always see the best of it. So you have expectations of what it might be like. Did you have expectations for what living in Calgary in Canada would be like?
Yes and no. I had two ideas. Well, the first time I came to Canada was to a summer camp, and I fell in love with a little Canadian girl. Back then, I was 11, and I'm like, back then is when I said, I'm moving to Canada, period. So when I was here, my expectation for me, I always thought of having a coffee shop with a library or bookstore at the same time, which hasn't happened, or keep applying my degree that was, or it's communication, public relations. Things have not happened that way, but it's the survival of the one that adapts the fastest, not the fittest or the strongest. It's the faster you adapt, it's easier for you to manage things. So things change constantly. And right now I end up in construction. I do safety in construction and I love it. I feel very passionate about it. It gives me the time, the money to do what I want. I don't see it as I fail or that I didn't meet my expectations, but since I came here, I decided to adapt. And if I actually had to start from zero many times, same as with cancer. So I'm not stranger to start again. And yeah, it's hard, but it's same thing when you're climbing. If you fall, well, get up again. As long as you're not hurt, try it again. Can you try it? Go again. And if you cannot do it that particular day, well, come again next week. So I don't see like failure as something bad, but a learning opportunity. When you don't succeed, you learn more than when you succeed. So even when I'm projecting, making those mistakes help me for next time to correct my body positioning, to thrust harder, or to place my tool in a more particular or angle. So expectations we all have, but I try to not dwell on them if I don't meet them.
Could you actually clarify the timeline of things, from when your original diagnosis was?
Yeah, I started feeling pain on March 2022. And that's after the Whipper I took. That's why it got misdiagnosed at the beginning, because I was certain that was climbing injury. It was a super aggressive cancer. So it was so bad that it was constricting my inferior vena cava that could result in a thrombosis or a heart stroke or something. Then I ended up at the hospital in May. In June, I started with the chemotherapy. I finished chemo in September. So Festiglass opened registration for competing. So I'm like, oh, let's go. I still have the time. I called my doctor. I called the insurance company to ask if it was okay. And like, well, sure. If you can make it and it's okay with your doctor, go for it. So I went, I competed, and then I went back to work. And I've been following with tests and doctor appointments. Of course, unfortunately, that's part of what it is. You develop PTSD, and every pain you have, the first thought is like, cancer is back, cancer is back. So I have gone through additional tests to confirm that it's not back. Now my last test and appointment is this fall in October. If everything is clear, I'm officially out of remission. And whatever comes, comes, and we'll deal with it as it comes.
Yeah. So coming back to where we started at the beginning of the conversation with the World Cup in Edmonton, I believe it's the first World Cup since one of the originals in North America, or one of the originals, period, which was in Quebec City. I think it's like the 90s. What was the impact of the event for comp ice climbing and dry tooling that you've seen so far in Canada? And what effect do you think it might have going forward?
This first one, I actually got together with other of the team members and I set up a meet and greet at one of our local gyms here in Calgary to explain what competitive ice climbing is. People know about ice climbing, and that's what I wanted to clarify, that it's not ice climbing, it's competitive ice climbing, that's more like a gym competition climbing where you have specific rules and holds and all that stuff and how it works. And of course, we had a lot of people asking, oh, do you have those things that go in the ice? Yeah, no, that's ice climbing. This is not ice climbing. This is competitive ice climbing. And explaining them the tools, the different tools for, and the different crampons. We got interest of people like, oh, I would like to try that. I would like to see that. For me, it's a labor of love. I wouldn't say I'm the best, but I'm very passionate about it and promoting the sport. And there was interest. And of course, because it's a new thing to Edmonton or Alberta, it doesn't appeal that much at the beginning. So it's just to promote it and get people talking and having more dedication to the sport, because here in the Rockies, the Bow Valley is mostly people that go dry tooling to prepare for ice climbing. There's no people that dedicate themselves to train, just the little misfits like myself that go in summer to dry tool just for fun. It's going to increase, that's my forecast. And we have a lot of passionate people, like we have Matt Westlake, we have John Blackwood, and myself, that we are passionate about that we want people to be involved, to discover the sport, to enjoy the sport. And from that, it will develop.
Yeah. It's really surprising to me that there isn't more climbers because of the long history of dry tooling in Alberta, specifically because of people like Sean Isaac helping to develop some of the first like bolted, mixed and dry tooling routes in, starting in the mid 90s and then, progressing all the way into the 2010s. And, the Playground was one of the first dry tooling crags in North America and things like that. And I understand using it as a training tool, but still, like, you would expect more.
It's expensive. What I see is right now, rock climbing is very appealing because it's an Olympic sport. Everybody's doing it. It's cool. It's affordable within sports. Like you can just go to a gym and boulder. You don't need to have harness. You don't need to have belay device. You just have a pair of shoes, some cheap chalk, and you're set. And for dry tooling, if you want to go full on, you need to have your tools. If you break peaks, that's another add-on. You need to have a helmet, you need to have a harness, you need to have a belay device, you need to have a rope, you need to have your competition boots or a makeshift boot or cycling shoe that you put a set of bolt-on crampons. So that kind of deters people.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge, and I love challenges. So it's little by little baby steps. That's why every time that somebody at the gym approaches me saying like, oh, that's so cool what you're doing with your tools, like, you want to try them? Like, just give a lap. I'll give you a belay and I'll explain you. They're very good climbers, like mixed climbers and dry toolers here in the Bow Valley. But they don't go into the competitive side for X, Y, or Z. Maybe they're not interested. And also it's very expensive to go competing, because it's not only, oh, I'm going to compete, I pay my fee and that's it. It's pay travel, pay lodging, pay food, to do 1-2 climbs and pay all that. Yeah, the cost benefit might not be there for some.
Yeah, of course.
And there are no festivals around. So that's another one.
Yeah, that's another. Yeah, I guess my question wasn't really directed at comp ice climbing as opposed to dry tooling more generally. Because ice climbing competitions is really kind of like an extreme version of dry tooling.
Well, they're great dry toolers and they're putting roots all the time. But it's, I don't know, probably it's not highly Instagrammable yet. Unless you see the picture of JC Dubois in underwear climbing, or myself climbing yesterday in underwear. But it's...
Boxer's Day.
Yeah, Boxer's Day. Like, oh, it was hot yesterday. Like, so hot. It's like anything else. I remember when I started climbing back in the 90s, it was it's an extreme sport and you're going to die. That was what everybody told me. I'm like, no, you have this, you have that. I was explaining to some people that I used to climb with cordelette to make knots as I was going up, to jam them in cracks or any features. And they're like, really? Like, yeah, that's how I started. When I finished university, it was a bit more popular and trendy, and same thing, people not wearing helmets. So my brother and I were one of the few wearing helmets. Now, last time I was in Mexico, there's so many gyms and so many areas and so much development. So I see the same. It just needs to become appealing to people, because I forgot who mentioned that in one of the broadcasts of the competitions, that dry tooling is the cool, crazy uncle of rock climbing. So it's like, it's insane. You have sharp things on your hands, on your feet, and you're just jumping around with them. Like, that doesn't make much rational sense, but it's part of the fun of dry tooling.
That sounds like something Matt Groom would say. I don't know.
Bro,
if he was
I think it was Matt. I'm not sure, but
I feel like that's an accurate description. Okay, so you were making knots out of cordelettes and climbing around Mexico City, and I think you actually helped establish a crag near Autonomous University. I forget the acronym. Was it UCAM?
UNAM.
UNAM. Ah, okay. I don't know where UCAM came from. But so I know you helped develop there. But were you dry tooling at all in Mexico?
Yes, that was early 2000s, and I bought myself a pair of, I don't know if it was already Petzl, Charlet, the Astars, straight shaft with a leash, and I was just bouldering and traversing. And that's what I was doing. And after I went to Quebec and I took a official ice climbing course, and holy smokes, my knuckles hurt. After that, they were straight shaft and so painful. But it was quite interesting to try to use your tools on a crag when sport climbing was still considered an extreme sport, and everybody thought that you were going to die any day of your climbs. Yeah, it was interesting.
From your dry tooling traverse. Okay, this is the last question that we always end on. If you were to give your younger self one piece of beta, and it could be for climbing, it could be for life, it could be for anything, what would that be?
Don't doubt yourself. I know that many things that I fell short was because I doubt myself. Even in climbing, like, oh, I cannot climb that. And as an example, my first on-site 12B was because I said, I don't care, let's go for it. I dyno, and same situation as with in Swiss cheese. I landed my hand on a good hold. I'm like, this is it. Don't doubt yourself, go for it. If you're in a safe environment, just go for it. The worst thing is that you need to try it again. That's the worst thing that could happen. So yeah, that will be my own beta advice.
Thank you very much, Pedro, for chatting today.
You're welcome.
You can follow along with Pedro's competition season via his Instagram at Pete Climbing. So Pete Climbing. He shares a lot of updates, including tinkering with gear and different training techniques. As always, thanks to Hannah Noel for providing the intro music and Andrew Solomon for editing. If you enjoyed today's conversation, become a member at iceicebeta.com. We have both a free option, which gives you access to exclusive giveaways and other offers, and if you're feeling generous, we have a paid tier as well. All the money gets reinvested in the podcast and the online magazine. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.